This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. Today's guest is Bell Witch drummer Jesse Shreibman. Earlier this year, Bell Witch released their new album, Stygian Bow, Volume 1. Jesse spoke to me during the summer from his home in Tacoma, Washington. Hey Jesse, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I read that you grew up in the Bay Area.
San Rafael, California.
For people that aren't familiar with that, what's the character of San Rafael as compared to, say, Oakland or San Francisco?
It's totally suburban compared to that. But San Rafael is cool because you're super close to all those places. So I grew up going out there and hanging out like most of my youth. Because you could always find something better to do in like Oakland or San Francisco than San Rafael.
What line of work were your parents in?
My dad is kind of like an education administrator and like educator, but at the time he was the head. He was kind of like running a school. But he also teaches at universities. He teaches at Sonoma State and this other school called Dominican College. And my mom, when I was growing up, most of the time was a ballet teacher and has now actually become a nurse practitioner since then. But
that probably is kind of inspiring as her son to see her go from one career into a completely different career. Like, the idea that you can totally change your trajectory if you want to.
It gives me hope in me trying to be a musician currently, and I kind of always think about that. It's like, I don't know if I'm 50 and this isn't viable anymore. I could just go to school again and do something else.
You could become a ballet teacher.
I could become a ballet teacher. It's in the blood, man.
Did you dance when you were younger?
This is interesting. So I didn't dance, but my brother actually has become a very famous break dancer, kind of worldwide.
Did he study with your mom as well?
No. So when I was young, I kind of went the punk route, and my brother went the hip hop route. And I think that like dance was always encouraged in our house, and like we were always really lucky because both my parents are musicians as well. So like we kind of always had instruments around, and we had this big kind of floor where like my brother would kind of have kids come over and break dance after school, and that's kind of what our house was like. It was pretty cool.
Wow. So your that's his primary thing. He dances for a living.
Yeah, he's been doing it since he was 15. I mean, he's got a pretty impressive sort of career. But yeah, he's won pretty much every major international breakdancing competition, and he's toured with like Justin Bieber, and he's with KRS-One, all types. It's like runs the gamut. He's done like the Oscars, or excuse me, the Academy Awards, I believe, or Grammys. So it's kind of crazy.
Has he ever come and danced with your band?
No, he has never danced with my band, but there was a band actually recently that are some buddies of mine. It was kind of funny, but they did put him breakdancing slow-mo like in this heavy metal video they made, which was pretty funny.
So is he older or younger than you?
He's 3 years younger than me.
Okay. So basically your parents waited until you were old enough to get out of the house, and then they split up, but your brother had a few more years to go.
Yeah, totally. But by the time he was like 17, he kind of was already traveling internationally for dancing. So that was, I think, his way of getting the F out of there.
Was there a lot of music in your house when you were growing up?
Yeah, totally. It was something that my parents always sort of like made a part of it, which I think we were really lucky for. And one thing that I'm always very appreciative is my dad in particular was always really cool about letting me go to concerts with him, you know, and he started taking me to shows that I wanted to go to starting in like 4th grade, which is really cool. I mean, there were a lot of shows that he wouldn't let me go to, and I was definitely like censored a lot, but he was always willing to like make an effort to take us to see live music, you know. And then, you know, we always had like starting around when I was probably 10 or 11, we had a piano and a drum set and an electric guitar and a bass just in our living room, like sitting around.
Did your parents play the instruments too?
My mom's pretty good at piano. And she's the one who she learned how to play like the electric guitar and the bass, you know, sort of fundamentally when I was a kid, which is super cool. And then my dad plays trumpet.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So what are some of the concerts that you saw when you were growing up with your dad?
Well, I mean, I remember, so the first shows he ever took me to were like, I think it was like James Taylor and Santana, you know, kind of stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, Bay Area. We used to go to like Shoreline Amphitheater and the Cow Palace. And like, but I remember the first show that I ever went to voluntarily was actually still to this day one of the coolest shows I've ever been to, I think. But was the Tibetan Freedom Concert in the Polo Fields.
Was that the Beastie Boys?
Yeah, it was everyone. It was like, and I was so young, and it really blew my mind. But it was like, I think I went there to see Smashing Pumpkins and the Beastie Boys, you know, because I was in 4th grade. But yeah, I saw Sonic Youth, you know, Rage Against the Machine, like Richie Havens played, John Lee Hooker. It was, you know, all over the place. It was super cool.
Did the Dalai Lama make an appearance?
Yeah, I think he did. And like Yoko Ono spoke and got booed off the stage and people were throwing bottles at her, which was really weird.
Huh.
It was pretty intense, like, but it was awesome. So that was like the first show I ever went to voluntarily. And then I started I really liked ska as a kid. I had like a babysitter who got me into the specials at like a very young age. So, and my dad always liked it because there was trumpet. So he would kind of like let me go to ska shows, which is initially how I was sort of introduced to punk, which is kind of the direction I ended up going.
Did you start going to shows on Gilman Street?
Yeah, totally. I've been to many shows there. I've played many shows there. Yeah, that place is great. It's been around forever.
So did you start playing drums when they kind of appeared in your living room, or did you have like an inclination towards it before then?
My parents kind of were like, all right, you have to learn an instrument now. What do you want to play? And I don't quite remember how I landed on drums, but I just did. And then they bought me a used kit and I started taking lessons for about a year. But then I had a really weird thing go down with my drum teacher that kind of forever scarred me from
Wait, what happened?
Ever taking lessons. It's kind of a crazy story. Guy named Jeff Newhauser, who's teaching a bunch of people that I knew, a bunch of kids. He, long story short, out of nowhere disappeared to New York and kind of let all the students know, hey, you know, I'm gone. Can't teach anymore. And no one thought anything of it. And then about 6 months later, all of us got calls from the FBI because he got caught in one of the first to catch a predator sort of internet phishing things in New York, whatever you call that when you catch old dudes trying to meet up with young boys on the internet. So he got caught in that, and I think was in prison for like a very long time. But so basically, yeah, I took drum lessons with that guy for like a year, and luckily nothing ever happened to me or any of my friends somehow. But I think that kind of set this weird, and I think in the long run it ended up working for me. But I always had a hard time with like music teachers after that, I think. Which I went on to play music my whole life, but I always have had a hard time like in school with music teachers or just basically taking lessons in general. So I've kind of had this very like DIY approach to drumming, mostly because I never really trusted, music teachers after that, which is totally unfair because there's a lot of amazing music teachers.
Well, wait. So when you were actually taking lessons with this guy, did you trust him, and did you feel like you could engage, or are you just kind of not the type of person that likes to learn in that formalized setting when it comes to music?
I think that kind of messed with me for a while, but then I ended up taking lessons for about a year when I was in high school because I joined I was in pretty much most of the bands. There weren't very many drummers that were around, so I was like immediately in, intermediate jazz ensemble and big band and symphonic band. And I kind of was always in those classes, but it was particularly when I was in this one jazz class that I was just like, I'm not good at jazz. And I'd never really listened to jazz. And I took lessons from the most amazing dude ever, this guy named Sly Randolph, who lived in this really terrible neighborhood in Richmond. But I used to drive out there when I was like 16, and take lessons from him. And he was like the coolest old jazz dude. And so I think I definitely learned a lot from him in a short period of time, but I've also never really been good at practicing on my own. I think that's why I've always been in so many bands, like all the time. I think that's kind of the way that I practice.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like dancing alone if you're playing drums by yourself. And you can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's hard.
I wonder if your brother danced. Did he practice dancing at the house when you were growing up? Or would he just...
Yeah, he totally did. But it very quickly evolved into there always being like 4 to 6 people doing it together,
right.
It's exactly like a band, it's like people hanging out, doing whatever they like to do,
Well, music is such an inherently social art form that it makes sense. I mean, I think lots of people feel guilty for not practicing more on their own.
Totally. I'm one of them. And I think for me at a pretty young age, I think I first sort of started touring, when I was about 19, or 20. And I think that like music, that's how I always looked at music. I was like, okay, apparently I'm able to do this and people want me to be in their band, and that's cool. But I think in the beginning, a lot of it for me was just a way to travel and a way to like meet people that, were like-minded. And I never really thought about the fact that I was actually actively engaging in music all the time. It just kind of felt natural to me. And it was a way for me to like get out of town and like skip class or and have a good time
Right. Well, I mean, I think if you look at the history of music, for the vast majority of that history, it's used in that way to bring people together, whether it's in a spiritual context, like playing music in a worship ceremony type of a thing, or in war or whatever,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what it's there for. It's a way of bringing people together. But so what band were you touring with when you were 19?
It was like my first real band. It was this band called the Mackay. At that point, I lived in Chico, California, because I went to college there. And I kind of...
Did you ever play at a place called the Blue Room in Chico?
Absolutely.
That's the only... I played there with one of my first bands when I was about probably 18 or 19.
Yeah, cool.
So that would have been in the late 90s.
That's cool, man. I mean, yeah, I think that there's a lot of touring bands who've played Chico, and I think everyone kind of has the same opinion on it, which is, maybe we shouldn't ever go there again. But we might have just had a good time, So I think when I moved there, I didn't really know anyone, and it took me a while to find people to play music with. I basically brought my drums up, and they were just sitting in my car for like 8 months.
What were you studying in school?
I ended up, I have a degree in philosophy and a minor in criminal justice.
What did your studies, like, how did your studies of criminal justice frame what's happening in the world of criminal justice right now?
Oh my God. I mean, everything. So the reason why I did that as a minor is because I was sort of thinking about going into law, and it was a way to sort of get a minor and study law at the same time, as in, but then, in most of those classes, I was kind of the only person that didn't want to be a cop and like didn't support the police, which was really interesting. And I think I got this really weird sort of perspective on what the police are actually thinking, or at least the way that they're taught in those classes. And I disagreed immensely with a lot of it, and it kind of helped me because then I sort of stood out in class and everything was fine. But I think that like the situation that we're in now is so systemic and so problematic, and it's all I can say is a lot of the literature I was reading in those classes sort of support the militarization of the police, and that is like the absolute wrong thing to do. And I'm hoping that this time is used positively and there can be some major reforms that take place.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm hoping.
Yeah. But I think it is something I think about a lot, because a lot of those, I think that being in those classes did point out one thing very clearly to me, which is that there's a certain psychological profile of people that do go into law enforcement and want to do that. And a lot of that has to do with the ability or need to have other people making decisions for them. And I think that was something that I ran into a lot in those classes. Was
You mean the idea that some people are just comfortable following orders and not thinking critically about every decision they make?
Yes, and I think that is a large majority of the type of person that would be okay with being a police officer. I think that the average person, if they're asked, would you be a police officer? Would you be willing to do what they're doing at these protests? No one would say yes.
I think that...
But there's some people that do, and those people are like, who are doing it, and I think that's the issue. They need to get those types of people out of those positions of power. And that goes with the territory of being told orders and like living in a ranked society. If you're in a ranked society, there's always someone below you.
Right.
And I think that's the issue at hand. And I think that people do need to understand that existential dread and fully embrace it, and, see that maybe things aren't universal. I think that the police operate on a function of maintaining the status quo and they're not allowed to question the status quo. It's part of their training, and that's their job. And I think that those people who are willing to do that are going to have a harder time standing up against it, but then also have been trained to use a power dynamic against other people, because that's how they are taught, And I think that I'm very excited that there's places talking about defunding the police. I think that like taking a more socially based, like rehabilitative approach, using de-escalation tactics is how you do everything, whether you're a bartender or...
Right. I mean, in this country, it's just a matter of if that can be as profitable for industry as militarizing the police. I mean, that's how things get done in this country, is if people can benefit from it financially in a very direct way, then it seems to push things along. And obviously, you could argue that if everybody is treated equally, and everybody's allowed the resources necessary to live their best life, then that'll benefit everybody in, obviously financial ways, but in bigger ways, human ways that are beyond quantification. But it seems like, it just seems like in order for things to happen in this country, certain people need to be assured that they can make money off of it.
Yeah. And the world keeps turning, and the next 6 months come November and after November are going to be very interesting. And I just hope everyone is safe and keeps standing up against the bullshit.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, even if Trump gets voted out of office and all of the major police departments are defunded and reformed, I mean, the thing that you're talking about, this tendency to seek structure and want to be told what to do, that's woven into humanity. And then all of these people that were cops or that voted for Trump are still out in the general population. Like Trump is a symptom of the issue. You know, it's the bigger issue to me is that there's millions of people that are aligned with, you know, the propaganda that he's spouting or the, you know,
absolutely. And I like support this country and I really want it to change its ways. But I think I've been very lucky and have been able to travel a lot. And to me, this has never been a better time to get out of here. And
so where are you going to go?
Like, I don't know. Well, I don't know if I'm actually going to do that because I have a lot of ties here and like way too many animals, but to do anything particularly, but I don't know. I've almost moved to Germany twice. We talked about moving to Prague at one time.
Scandinavia seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, Scandinavia is super cool. I think that like I like places that are a little like more party, a little more upbeat. Like I think Scandinavia is super fun, but I might have a hard time living there.
Well, yeah, especially in the winter, you know.
Yeah, totally. I would move to Poland in a heartbeat, though, which is a weird one, but I love Poland.
Where is your family from?
My family is from the East Coast. So both my parents are from, you know, Philadelphia area. Like my whole family's East Coast. So we live.
You don't have Polish ancestry or anything like that?
I do have Polish ancestry.
So maybe that's why it calls to you, the homeland.
Yeah, kind of. I think that people are, I feel like it's just fun. They're kind of like, I think that they understand the struggle in the way that Americans kind of like, even just what's going on right now, like our country is really bizarre and kind of fucked up all the time. And I think Poland's that way too. So the people that live there have this sort of, they understand that things aren't always easy. And I respect that in them.
You're one of your animals.
Yeah, that's Ellie dog.
Nice.
Yeah. But
how did you meet Dylan?
Dylan and I have known each other, God, I think probably 11 years, maybe 12 years. So that old band that I was in called the Mackay, that was like the first band I ever toured with. And we toured pretty extensively. We used to play shows with Dylan's old band, who was from Lawrence, Kansas, called Samothrace. And so we played in the same scene kind of, and we played a lot of shows together. We would kind of meet up in the Midwest and play a couple shows together sometimes, or, you know, if they were on the West Coast, we would play a couple. And so I've known Dylan, I think, since I was probably 20. That means I've known him for 14 years. I think I've known him since I was about 20. And then he and a bunch of his crew from Lawrence moved out to Seattle. And that was when I wanted to get out of Chico. And so I basically just kind of followed all of them up to Seattle and ended up joining a band that even shared members sometimes with Dylan's bands. So we just kind of continued the relationship. And
How would you describe the creative community that you became part of in Seattle?
I think it was all sort of like very punk and crust oriented, and like crust is just kind of a combination of you know, metal and punk. We used to call it metal for punks, and it was a very it was honestly a very politically based movement for a long time, and a lot of punk house shows, you know, kind of sketchy bars, but it was always very DIY oriented. So like everyone that's the community that I kind of fell into. So we would, play a lot of weird, like warehouse shows and squats in Oakland, and all over the country, really. And it was really kind of a beautiful thing. They don't really exist anymore in this country, and the ones in Europe are going away. But you kind of used to be able to do these extended squat tours almost. And then you'd play like 5 or 6 bars in a month-long tour. And it was all very like self-sustained. They had bars inside. They'd have like, I don't know, like info shops with like books and stuff. And it was always kind of cool. So that's kind of the community that I fell into. But then once I moved to Seattle, that was the first time I ever lived in like a bigger city with a big music scene. And I think Seattle's a tough place to play music, especially now. But
why?
All the venues are shut down. And that was happening even before the quarantine. Just because of, gentrification, basically. Like Seattle went from being a very affordable place to live to completely impossible for most people, that don't make, $80,000 a year or up.
Mm-hmm.
So slowly it's been dwindling, but it's always been a really cool, like supportive community. And I hope it survives this pandemic. We shall see. I think it will, because the punk scene and all underground music scenes, I think, really are the heart in my life, of music. And those are the scenes that always persevere through this kind of stuff. I would not be mad if a lot of pop music sort of crumbled right now, but.
Well, it might be that some of these squat type venues will come back in the wake of whatever shuts down during the pandemic.
Totally.
Did you ever play?
And that would be cool.
Speaking of squats and speaking of Scandinavia, did you ever play in Denmark at Christiana? That anarchist
I've never
community?
played. I've actually never played at that one, but I've been to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I played a number of other ones that are like it. There was one in particular that's pretty. I think a lot of people know about it, but it's called Kopi or Coma F
mm-hmm.
in Berlin, where they've I think it's been a squat for, God, I don't know, 30 years, 35 years, and it's huge. There's over 100 people that live there at one point. Played there, and there's a lot of cool places, like that. But I wish I played Christiana. Maybe one day.
I played there, I think, once, and it was fun. It was interesting.
Totally. What band were you in?
I was playing with Marnie Stern at that time, guitar player.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it would be great if. That's what I'm hoping happens. I think that there's a lot of grassroots kind of stuff going on right now, and there's a lot of movement, and it would be very cool if somehow, in the wake of a lot of venues are inevitably going to be shutting down, I think it's inevitable that sort of the house show and squat shows and warehouse shows would have to come back, I would hope. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they really went anywhere or if everything just moved to other locations and generations, because I haven't really been part of that scene in a long time. I used to have a house when I was 18, 19, where lots of bands played in the basement, and I would go to lots of basement shows and play lots of basement shows around the country at that time. But
right.
I haven't really been tied to that scene in a long time.
To be honest, me neither.
I always assume that there's people doing things that I don't know about, For
sure. And I think that's part of getting older too. I feel like I've lost touch with a lot of that stuff, even though I'm not even that old, but I think that just kind of happens. But,
so Bell Witch is putting out a new album soon.
Yes, we are.
Was there any talk about whether or not to, push it back or wait until, you could tour?
Yeah, there was. It's been really weird releasing a record during these times because it's something I've tried to compartmentalize, but we had to cancel, I think, pushing about 4 months of touring this year, like was postponed or canceled. That was going to be in support of the record, like including 2 European tours, which were going to be really cool. And so now we can't play any shows, obviously. And we talked about pushing it back, but I think that we just decided that, it's important to kind of stay out there.
Mm-hmm.
And people are stuck at home. They're going to want to listen to music, and so we just kind of said, fuck it. And so far it's going well. The response has been really good so far. We've released like 2 songs out in the public, and I'm excited for it to come out. It was kind of a weird one because it's actually not a true Bell Witch album. It's a collaborative album with our buddy Eric, who plays in a band called Aerial Ruin. And we just kind of collaboratively wrote it with him. And it's the first time we've ever done anything like that with him. So came out pretty good, I think.
Yeah. Are you happy with your performance on it? And like in general, when you hear yourself played back, how do you feel about yourself, like on record? I think that a lot of people are probably like hypercritical. I'm very critical of myself, but I think I've learned to try to let go of that. We had some issues with the production of this record. I think it could have come out better and sounded different. But I think that happens a lot with records where, things happen in the studio and things change. But I think overall, I'm really proud of the release, and I think the songs are really good, especially for a first shot at doing it. And I'm excited at some point to play it in front of people. It's really weird releasing a record for a kind of a band that no one's ever seen before. But interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm dealing with a similar situation because I made my first quote-unquote solo record, and it was supposed to come out last month, cool. And I was supposed to be on tour, but we decided to push it back, especially since it's like the very first statement that I'm putting out there. But yeah, it's a weird time. Totally. But to be honest, like it's fine. It is what it is. Yeah. And
I'm trying to I know that a lot of musicians are like this, especially ones that tour a lot. It's like you're always so busy and you're never home, or it's like sporadic. And I think that I've really been trying to let go of all the cool stuff that I didn't get to do this year and just kind of take time and hang out at home and hang out with my partner, my animals, and work. I've been playing a lot of music at home, which has been really cool. I never really have a chance to do that, and kind of take advantage of the shitty cards we were dealt.
You mentioned that it's difficult to make it in Seattle on less than $80,000 a year. Are you working another job to supplement your income from the band?
I've always done that. I've had a lot of different jobs lately, especially since we've been touring a lot. I bartend part-time. But I've definitely been completely out of a job this whole time. Luckily got the unemployment, but that's going to run out soon. Then I'm going to have to get a job probably.
Where do you bartend?
Now I bartend at this really cool spot in Tacoma. It's called 1111. Just like a dive bar with good food.
I'm up in Seattle relatively frequently, like a couple times a year, but okay. I haven't really spent much time in Tacoma.
Yeah, I bartended in Seattle for years though, pretty much all on Capitol Hill. So I don't know. I also wouldn't be mad if I, just didn't do that anymore. Thought about, I don't know. I used to be a substitute teacher for a period of time, and I did a lot of work in social work for a period of time, but then I had to quit doing those things because of music and being gone too much. Mm-hmm. So I thought about that maybe for a little bit, or I don't know, man. Trying to see what my job looks like when it opens up.
Do you have any kind of ambitions around your music? Is it important to you to make more money doing it or to become more popular?
I think that I guess overall, I'm going to say no, that's not the priority, but it's really nice. And I feel super lucky. And I feel I think it's really amazing that as many people have connected with specifically Bell Witch, because I think it's a hard band to listen to. And that's something that neither Dylan nor I ever expected to happen. And I think I'm just always really grateful for any support. I think that along with that, we definitely have ambitions to make the band as good as we can and as big of a thing as we can.
So what does that mean to you?
I mean, we've been really, really lucky with some of the bands that we've gotten to tour with over the last couple of years. And we've watched, a good example is Neurosis. They're definitely one of my favorite metal bands of all time. And we got to tour with them, and they're a band that Dylan and I both sort of idolize a lot in their approach and even in their sort of DIY ethic. They started their own label a long time ago and, release on that, which is super cool. And so I think that in the long term, if this can turn into sort of a DIY business, I would love to start a label, in that way that they did that, or in the same way that Converge did Death Wish. That would be cool. And if I don't have to bartend anymore and I just get to play music, that would be really cool. So I think that that's kind of where I lie in that. But I'm also just grateful at all the opportunities we've had and all the killer shows we've gotten to play.
Do you find yourself circling back to specific thoughts throughout the day?
I think, a lot of it for me, I think that like overall, I'm a pretty anxious person. And I think that people know that about me who know me. Like I'm always moving and like I always need something to do. And I think that I always feel like I need to be doing something, which is really cool when you're busy. But I think lately during quarantine life, and I'm completely jobless, it's been more, how do I not think that I need to be doing more? Because I really don't have to do anything right now. So that's what I think about a lot of the day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can first ask yourself the question, why do I feel like I need to be busy all the time? And is that actually leading me to the place that I want to be? Totally.
I'm
the same way. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are like that. And I know, especially with all the touring and stuff, you're kind of forced to be like that. And you get almost, it's like you're physically trained to be sort of thinking you need to be going somewhere. And then it's always weird when you come home because you're like, wait a minute, we don't have to go somewhere right now.
Maybe that's what makes you seek out touring and to begin with, because you already have that predisposition. But I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, just overall, like I'm really appreciative for you for taking the time to talk to me. It's pretty cool. It's my first podcast. And I think that I really appreciate all the support we've gotten, and we don't take it lightly. And we're kind of constantly trying to push ourselves to, just keep expanding and doing better in our weird craft that is Bell Witch.
Well, Jesse, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.